Howdy, and welcome to the veritable edge of Western civilization. I am your host, David Alexander English, calling to you live from Venice Beach, California. My first of the video broadcast. So I figured I love that opening. That was the opening for my live stream show. Speaking of which, YouTube has changed its rules so that even though I did 200 episodes of my live streaming show, in order for me to continue to do live streams in the future, you have to have at least 1,000 subscribers, and I only have 500 on my YouTube channel. So I need to come up with 500 subscribers soon so that I can continue to live stream, which I'm looking, my goal in the coming year is to go live streaming 24 hours a day. So I think I have enough material to with my movies and whatnot to really go forward with that. So that's something I'm kind of looking forward to. The David Alexander English channel. Blah, 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 blah. Anyway, medical updates. So a week ago today, I met with the oncologist down at UCLA Harbor, and she asked me what I wanted to do and when I wanted to see her again and all that, and what had happened between our last visit a month ago. But one of the most important things that came out of that conversation was, and one of the main reasons why I went to that appointment was because I wanted to get access to the visual component of the PET scan that they did on October 17th. I just knew that it would look really cool. And artistically, I had an idea that I wanted to explore with it. So she went over it with me, pulled it up on the computer, and I took photographs of it. And one of the most important things that came out of that was that, so there's two places, two major symptom areas. One is the back of my throat. There's a lesion that's been growing up my throat for the past year. And then there's this lump thing, which turns out to be, it's a stellium of 3 lymph nodes. The one that's closest to the surface is the largest one, and it's about the size of an egg. And I was under the impression that the lymph node thing was just trying to do its job, and that the cancer was, what's down in my throat. But wrong. It turns out that it's both. There are active cancer cells in the lesion, of course, and that shows up on the PET scan. But the larger one is actually this. There's active cancer cells inside of that. Good to know. And so I wanted to share the video. This audio composition, musical composition I made up a week or so ago with my GoFundMe crowd, and the only way to do that was to make a video and post it on YouTube, and then then get the link to put into the GoFundMe platform. And so I used the still images from the PET scan in making that video. Just kind of threw it together last weekend. Last weekend was a really good weekend, even though I was still processing some of the stuff that came from the oncologist visit. Good friend of mine, a beautiful woman with red hair, green eyes, freckles, and a very sensual nature, spirited me away, and we practiced the ancient art of canoodling for about 3 days, and then she went on her way and delivered me back in my universe. But in the course of that, I was cultivating, I brainstorm, and like literally, like I'll get these, just torrents of ideas coming and that blossom into other ideas and whatnot. And there's certain things that really stimulate that. And so last weekend I got a lot of ideas and clarity on what I'm doing, and the fact that I need to go deeper. So there's a friend of mine from Rainbow, a brother stepped up named Ari Khan, and it turns out that he worked on a project a while back with one of the leading authorities on what I have, and he was able to put us in touch this week, and we had a phone consultation day before yesterday, and this doctor's name is Dr. David Neil Hayes, and it was a wonderful communication, wonderful gentleman. And we had this conversation where he said, he's treated over 10,000 people with what I have. He's a researcher as well as an oncologist. And what he said is that if you're going to do treatment, the chemoradiation, there's no point in waiting, because the longer you wait, the more challenging it is to treat. He said the difference between stage 2 and stage 3 is obviously stage 3 is harder to treat than stage 2, and specifically that it's harder to target the cancer with radiation for stage 3 than it is to stage 2. He said, of all the people that he had treated, patients that he'd had with this, there were a small percentage of people that had chosen not to do their treatment, and he said that basically the majority of the treatment outcomes were between 70 and 90% cured. He said that of the ones that chose not to do the treatment, I said, well, what kind of outcomes did those folks have? And he says, well, they're all dead. So there's that. It was a wonderful dose of reality, and it definitely gave me pause. It was very sobering. And then, I slept on it, and I realized that I had a couple of things going for me besides, the option of doing the chemoradiation therapy. And their recommendation is 10 weeks of 5 days a week radiation, and 3 massive doses of chemo. And and they think that it's 100% curable. So But one of the main things that Dr. Hayes said is that all these therapies, they all have side effects. And I said, like what? He says, well, it's not for me to say. It'd be better if the person who's administering the therapy go over that with you, because I don't know specifically, just with this telephone interview, I don't know specifically what they're going to use. So so there's that. So what today, at the insistence of my friend Heidi Henkel, I went back to her and office, and we did a scan, did a sensitive imago scan, and found, so for the past week, since a week ago, this is Friday, I don't even know what the date is, but my appointment, I'm guessing today's the 13th, that's right, and Friday the 13th. A week ago today was the 6th, and that was the day that I had the oncologist appointment. And that was the morning that I realized that the reason why the 4 days of scans and treatment that I'd done with Heidi that week resulted in on the last day, the worst scan I've ever had. So the sensitive imago, I'll just go over it again in case you haven't seen this before, but the sensitive imago machine, it's a bioresonance machine, and it picks out data points throughout your body and all your organs and systems and whatnot, and it scales them according to a color code, with white as perfect, pristine, yellow, green, red, blue, and black. Black is like you're in serious trouble. And so it'll look at your liver, it'll look at your, so you'll see a picture of the liver, and there'll be all these data points in the liver. And, your spleen and lungs and, nervous system, your cells, it even looks at your chromosomes, because it has an encyclopedia of what a healthy person body should look like, and it also has an encyclopedia of all the possible maladies of the human physiology. And so when I say it has an encyclopedia, what I mean is it has the energy signature, the vibratory signature of health and malady. And so it can tell you specifically and show you, after it does the scan, it can tell you what organs, what viruses or whatever are in what organ, and how strong those viruses are, or that bacteria is, or whatever. And it can then it can actually treat you by providing your system with the vibratory frequencies that would help you rebalance that particular system in your body, or that organ, or whatever. And then it can actually make recommendations. It can tell you what the psychological factors behind whatever the imbalance is. It can tell you what foods are not good for you to have, and what organs it's not good for you to have that food for. And it can also do the reverse. It can tell you what foods would be beneficial for you to have. It can tell you what flower essences are good to have. It can tell you what crystals you want to be, interacting with, and all that kind of stuff. It's an incredible piece of technology. It comes from Prague. So after the Dr. Hayes consultation the other day, I have to admit, man, I was kind of bumming, because I was thinking, I may have to change it up, and go ahead with this chemoradiation sooner than I would have liked. Not that I'd like to, but my goal has been to make that unnecessary, and to do what I can to make that unnecessary. But I recognize that, if it's necessary, then I'm going to do it. After talking to him, it seemed like it was imperative. But then I slept on it, and I was not going to go back to Heidi and use the sensitive imago resource until I had spent more time away from the bus. And what ended up that week, last week, not this past week, the week before, where I worked with Heidi for 4 days. Just to recap, and I told her this today, that those 4 days that we worked really closely together. I mean, I spent 4 hours a day in there doing the scans and doing the treatment afterwards with like a Beamer machine and a Rite machine, and it was some really deep work. But we ended up with my system seeming like I was going backwards. But it turns out that the reason why, on Friday morning, I realized that the reason why that happened, because we were both like, why is this going backwards? And so like the Wednesday to Thursday scan was, where Thursday was the worst scan I've ever had. It's like, what happened on Wednesday night? I had a great night's sleep. I had plenty of food, good food, and it didn't make any sense. Like, there was nothing that I could think of until Friday morning. I realized that it was the black mold that was totally whacking my system. And that scan on Thursday showed us exactly the full extent of how black mold can affect me and has been affecting me. But the black mold is not the cause of this cancer. And this gets down to the best part about my conversation, the consultation I had with Dr. Hayes. What he said is that, I told him what we're doing and my theories about going into this hot spring a couple of years ago, and after the hot spring getting this sinus infection and it was resistant to any kind of treatment and so forth, and all of that resulting in this lump in my neck. And he said, nope. He said, 25 years ago you were exposed to the HPV virus, and it takes about that long for it to present in the form that in the cancerous form. And so usually it presents around 54, 55. I'm 62. And so this is what he said, that in that 25 years, the cancer, the HPV virus had fused into my DNA of the cells in my throat, and that's why my immune system doesn't recognize it, because it sees it as me. So that right there was like, what I really needed to hear, because, I had been, it would have been great to have had this conversation with somebody of knowledge 3 months ago. but I'm, better late than never, because one of my theories that I've been operating on is that my system, if I, clean it up and everything, it should be able to heal itself. But, I should be able to get my immune system to react to this and take care of itself. But that's the chances of that happening are very unlikely, given the fact that, the DNA is fused. So that was good. I mean, that's when you're in a situation like this, knowledge is power. Information is crucial. The more accurate information you have, the easier it is to make decisions that are actually going to do something. Move the dial. And I'm all about moving that friggin' dial. And in that light, I'm really grateful to my friend Heidi. I said this to her today for coming to me. I mean, being insistent that I come in today, because I was like, oh man, I don't know that I want to. But I've stayed out of the bus. In the past 7 days, I've only spent 2 nights in the bus, and well ventilated nights, I have to say, with the roof window open, and the result is, when we did the scan today, it's probably one of the best scans, if not the best scan, that we've ever done. I mean, everything, is in the yellow, and not everything, but most things. There's more yellow and white and green than anything else. And there was one blue spot in my in the lymphatic system, and we treated it. The viruses, the 5 viruses that I've been focusing on, the papilloma, the herpes, strep, 2 streps, and strep isn't a virus, it's a bacteria, and staph. All of those are not active. They're all we've essentially achieved our goal, which was to make them not a factor in the healing process from here on out. And so there's some good news right there. So rather than being discouraged, I'm actually encouraged, because I realized that I have one of this technology is one of, and access to it is one of the factors that I have working for me, or at my disposal to. One of the resources I have at my disposal to apply to the situation that may change the equation. Hopefully. I mean, that's what I'm here to do, is change this friggin' equation, man. If I can use a math metaphor. So if you go to my Facebook page, you'll see that I posted about 4 different live Facebook lives this week, and 2 of them showed me painting this painting, and that was my gift to Heidi for all this, this opportunity to work with her. I mean, she's been so generous, and I just felt the need to give back what I can give back, and it was so. This week, I wheeled my cart out on the boardwalk and set up, in part so that I could fix the cart, because the wheel came off about a month or so ago, and to put it back on. And I wasn't sure if it was healed, if it was fixed right. So I got all my stuff off the cart. I was like, well, why don't I need to paint this painting. Why don't I go ahead and set up? So it was fun to once again, do it just like I've done it, for so many years. It was a lot of fun. The last time I'd set up was the day after I got the diagnosis, so that would have been September 20th. And so that was 3 months ago. And it was fun to set up. It's a meditation for me. You know what I mean? It's kind of like eating comfort food. Eating popcorn or eating mac and cheese for some people. It's like comfort food to just go through the ritual of setting up my stuff. And even though it's a lot of work, it wore me out. So I set up and I painted the painting, or at least the background for it. And then the next day I went out again and finished the painting. And in those 2 days, case in point, man, this is why I'm not setting up. What's the best use of my time? I did not sell a thing on the boardwalk. And but luckily somebody was watching the video, somebody named TD, and they donated a big chunk of dead presidents to my cause. And thank you, TD. So it was really wonderful. They donated it to the GoFundMe page. So, which just kind of reinforced that the future for me is it's not in the individual sales face-to-face necessarily, but more in terms of broadcasting and getting the word out, sharing the legacy, so to speak. So I'm very encouraged after this scan that we just did today. The best scan we've ever done. That it's pretty obvious. The bus and the black mold has been contributing to killing me. I'm killing myself still with the cancer, but I feel like it looks like it's not spreading, but there's no way to tell right now, today. I feel healthy. I feel healthier now that I'm cutting my distance from the bus, staying away from the black mold exposure. And luckily it hasn't rained at all. It's been relatively sunny here, and that helps keep the spores down, so that when I do have to go into the bus, that I'm not inundated. The magic number, I think, was 5,365. Excuse me. I don't think I brought any water. Left my water bottle at the house. I'm staying at my friend Rita's. Offered her front room till I get something else going on. Her front bedroom for me to stay in whenever I feel the need, till I resolve the transportation problem. So I've been taking her up on it the past 2 nights, and I left the water bottle there. So you might wonder, there we go. What's next? Well, here's where things get really interesting. I posted a live stream yesterday, Facebook live stream, that talks about my friend Rory McQuestion and the period of resonance that the whole world is coming into next week, where all the ley lines on the planet will be resonating at the same exact frequency for a period of at least 4 days leading up to and culminating on the solstice. What happens when this happens is wherever there are ley lines crossing, those are called nodes, And the more powerful the ley line, in other words, the larger the ley line, the more powerful it is. And wherever they cross, these are power spots, or what we call nodes. And those nodes become places where it is the veil becomes very thin there. It's an ideal place to meditate and to manifest and pray and commune between the dimensions, to communicate between dimensions, which sounds so totally friggin' funky new age, but deal with it, you know. So it turns out I'm about to, when I get off of here, I'm going to finish editing a piece that explains all the science and the history behind Rory and my work over the past 20, 30 years on this. And I'm calling the piece The Big Reveal, because it's kind of the coming out of all this work, and it's vitally important to the future of humanity on planet Earth, which also sounds like, you know, hyperbole and hype, emphasis on the hype part. But I think when you find out the details, you'll begin to understand the ramifications of this work. And if you had anything to do with the Conscious Evolution Day meditations that we did, global meditations we did 10 years ago, this is the next step. Quick rundown. 6 months ago, Rory sent me a photograph of an aerial view from a Google map of what's called a node, where there are two really powerful lines, ley lines, 30 pace wide ley lines crossing, and what's known as an Emperor Dragon line passing through them. And it turns out that I don't think he knew this when he sent it to me, but in the foreground of the photograph, about 100 miles away, 100 yards away, is the site that I discovered in Big Sur, the first site I discovered in 1993-94, that I made the Emergence Beyond 2012 movie in. And so what that said to me is, it's a very good chance that node was there when the site was created, possibly 10 to 12,000 years ago, and that whoever created it knew about this grid system. And so the key piece of information that's new to all that is the concept of the Emperor Dragon pairs. Okay, so in a nutshell, ley lines are measured by their width. It's a way of classifying them. The wider they are, the more powerful they are. Let's say they start at 1 pace wide through 5 paces wide. Now those are very common. They're all over the place. They're what I would call ubiquitous. It's hard to throw a stone and not hit one of those lines, right? And they're caused by the core of the Earth being affected by the interacting with the outer core of the Earth, creating sound waves that present themselves as standing waves of energy on the surface of the planet. Okay, so those are the 1 to 5 pace wide ley lines, Earth energy lines, right? Or subtle energy lines. And the next order of ley lines are usually from 10 paces, 20 paces, 30 paces wide. And those lines are caused by cosmic rays coming from the sun and interacting with the core of the Earth, and the same thing happening. It interacts with the core of the Earth, and it creates a sound, and that sound radiates out to the surface and as a standing wave, and the result is a 10 pace, 20 pace, 30 pace wide ley line. Okay. Now there's there until a couple years ago there were what we would call 50 pace wide lines. And 50 pace wide lines are caused by cosmic radiation coming from the center of galactic cores, the center of galaxies. So like our galaxy, all the galaxies in our galactic neighborhood. So we're constantly being bombarded by cosmic rays from those places, like neutrinos and gamma rays and all, alpha rays and so forth, right? And those rays interact with the core of the Earth, and they create a sound frequency that manifests as a standing wave on the surface as a 50 pace wide, or what was a 50 pace wide, what we call Emperor Dragon Line. And all ley lines are in pairs. So if there's one, it has a twin in parallel somewhere not far away. And as it happens, before 2017, there were 3 Emperor Dragon pairs that went all the way around the world. And wherever those ley lines cross one another are the most powerful nodes on the planet. And until 3 years ago, there were only 6 of those places. And 2 of them were in the ocean. So there were only 4 accessible on land. And so 3 years ago, something happened, and I talk about what I think may have been the catalyst for it in the article I'm about to publish, post on social media and everything. But 6 months later, the first Emperor Dragon, the 7th and 8th Emperor Dragon lines showed up on the planet, and then within the year, 2 more pairs, and so that now there are 6 Emperor Dragon pairs circumnavigating the globe, and that means that there's 12 Emperor Dragon lines. And as the big hoo-ha is that one of those Emperor Dragon pairs is crossing the United States for the first time. And since anybody's been paying any friggin' attention to this, and we don't know, when. So the reason why this is showing up and wasn't necessarily apparent before is because, in a nutshell, the solar system takes 250 million years to go to orbit around the center of the Milky Way galaxy. And as it does that, it does 3 sine, cosine, 3 periods where it goes above the plane of the galactic plane and then below the galactic plane. It does that 3 times in that 250 million year orbit. And so you can imagine that the space between and it does that orbit at a distance from the galactic core that is 26,000 light years. So you can imagine that there's not always a clear shot between the solar system and the galactic core. So there are times when there's a whole lot of stuff in between, like right now, visually, in terms of visual light, you can't see the galactic core because there's so much dust between us and between the solar system and the galactic center. And when there's dust and debris and planets and stars and all that kind of stuff in between, it diffuses the light and diffuses the radiation from our galactic core. And the same with all the other galaxies in our vicinity. So somehow in the past 3 years, there's been a clear path to the center of 3 other galaxies, and we're getting bombarded by this by that energy, by that cosmic energy, and its result is these 3 new, what to us are new, but most likely have been here before. Just like I said earlier, how the site that I discovered in Big Sur, it's a very good possibility that it presented once when this place was originally built, which it looks like it was built probably about 10,000 years ago. So saying all that to say, I'm going there next week. I'm going to be there on Tuesday and stay through the week. Stay for the week through the solstice, and sit on the node and see what that's all about, and meditate and go as deep as I possibly can into my shamanic journey. Thank you very much. And I'm probably going to get end up hiking up the road. It's a 5-mile hike to the top from the Pacific Coast Highway, and have my backpack and tent, and I have a hammock with a tarp to it, and not bringing a lot of food, but bringing water, and because you can't count on the springs up there. Just gonna go sit on a mountaintop, my favorite mountaintop, for the period of resonance, and meditate, and go as deep as I possibly can. So that's what's up with me. Anybody is welcome to join me there. You can, if you look on a map for Jade Cove or Plaskett Creek Road, Jade Cove, right across the street, is the entrance to Plaskett Creek Road, and you just follow that up to the top of the mountain, and you'll see me there. This road is like a Jeep trail. It's very steep. There's no place to turn around till you get up 4 miles, and there's a stretch that's like 30 yards long of bedrock that is really friggin' gnarly. And just a tip, you do not go up this road unless you have a high clearance vehicle, ideally 4-wheel drive, and make sure if you're coming that you bring enough water and food for yourself. It should be like a gallon a day per person. That's like standard wilderness stuff. So there, take that. Rory and I envision that in the future, as we finish mapping out this whole, this new system, this new upgrade to the Earth's natural energy system, natural energy grid, that ultimately, and we get the word out about these Emperor Dragon lines and these nodes, that ultimately everybody and their uncle, it'll become a thing where everybody will be gathering on during the periods of resonance, the periods just before the solstices and equinoxes, all over the world. So this Emperor Dragon pair that start in Big Sur, they go all the way across the country and exit in North Carolina and Virginia. And along the way, they hit all sorts of power spots previous power spots of 30 pace wide and 20 pace wide. I call them 30 pace wide and 20 pace wide and 50 pace wide. But the reality is that since these new the three new dragon pairs have shown up, all the ley lines on the planet have broadened, so they're wider than the designations that we had before. And our theory is that eventually it's going to be such that there won't be any place not covered by this energy. And there's just so much more to talk about, but we're at 45 minutes. I think you've probably listened to me enough. This is where we get to do my favorite part. Private message me if you have any questions, and look for the big reveal. So this is me beaming love at you because I can. Still. Thank you. We love you.